$200. That is what one season of the bag program cost me last year. 4 bags, 4 weekends, 1 sore back. It's a Saturday morning, coffee in my hand, the sprinkler ticking away. I walk out barefoot to admire the green I paid for, and there it is again. Yellow patches, thin spots. The same tired lawn I had the spring before, and the spring before that. That is the exact moment I stopped trusting the garden aisle, because the 4-step program sitting on that shelf is built to be repeated, not to fix anything. Every spring, I did the same 3 things. I bought the bag with the biggest number on the front. I spread it fast before the rain came. Then I waited for the miracle that never showed up. Nothing changed. Same patches, same money gone. Same feeling in my gut that I had been played, so I went digging. And this video splits into 2 parts, the feeding lie and the watering lie, and then one final method the companies could never put in a bag. I'm not naming that last one yet. You'll understand why when we get there. Last winter, I stood in my cold garage and read 2 fertilizer labels side by side, line by line. What I found on the back of those bags is the reason your lawn keeps failing every year. So here's the question I want you to sit with. What if the thing you are feeding your lawn is the exact thing quietly killing the ground underneath it? Part 1 is the version of this that hurts the most, the feeding problem, and I put it first because it is the lie almost every homeowner falls for, including me. You buy the bag, you see that big number, that 30 on the front, and you think more of that number equals more green. It feels logical. It felt logical to me for years. Here is what is actually happening beneath your feet. That number on the bag is nitrogen, and the nitrogen in most cheap bags is a synthetic salt. Read the label, it will say something like ammonium nitrate or urea. Those are salts, and salt does one thing when it hits moist ground. It pulls water out of everything living around it. When you spread that fast-release salt across your lawn, you get a burst of deep green in about 3 days. That green feels like proof it worked, but that green is not health. That green is a stress response. The grass is drinking a flood of soluble nitrogen and shooting up soft, fast blades with thin cell walls. Meanwhile, down in the soil, something is dying. The earthworms, the fungi, the billions of microbes that actually break down organic matter and feed your grass slowly and naturally, they get hit with that salt and they retreat or they die. There is a measurement for this. It is called the salt index, and the common synthetic nitrogen sources sit near the very top of it, far higher than natural sources. So here is the truth. Most people think they are feeding the grass, but what is actually happening is you are starving the soil, and a lawn with dead soil cannot feed itself. It becomes a patient on a drip. It needs the next bag, and the next, and the next. That is the reframe. You are not growing a lawn. You are running a life support machine, and the company that sells the machine also sells the only fuel it takes. Now, let me give you the fix from the simplest floor to the thing I do now. The simplest move costs you nothing. Stop bagging your grass clippings. When you cut the lawn and leave the clippings where they fall, they break down in days and return nitrogen straight to the soil. The extension research is blunt about this. Those clippings supply about 25% of your lawn's entire yearly nitrogen need for free. You have been raking your own fertilizer into a bin and driving it to the curb. The next step up is to switch from a synthetic salt bag to a slow-release organic source. Something like a screened compost or a natural meal-based feed with a low first number, a 5 or a 6 instead of a 30. It costs a little more per bag, but it feeds the microbes instead of frying them, and the microbes then feed your grass for months. And the stakes here are real. Keep dumping salt on dead ground and your lawn gets shallower, weaker, and more addicted every year until one dry August it just gives up and browns out in a week. I have watched it happen to my own front yard, but here is where it gets darker, because I wanted to know who wrote the advice I was following. That 4-step, 4 times a year schedule did not come from your soil. It did not come from nature. It came from a marketing plan decades ago designed around one goal. Get the homeowner to apply product on a calendar, whether the lawn needs it or not. The schedule was never about your grass. It was about 4 sales instead of 1. And that pushed me straight into the second half of the problem, because feeding is only one way they keep you coming back. If you want to go deeper on everything I just covered and see the exact soil rebuilding framework I put together after all this research, I laid it all out in a field guide called the Amish Lawn Guide, part of a complete series that also includes the Amish Soil Guide and the Complete Amish Yard Field Edition. These are the methods the old greenkeepers actually used, written out step by step so you can apply them to your own yard this season. You can find the link in the description below, and it is the closest thing I know to a manual for getting off the bag program for good. Part 2 is the watering lie, and this one is technically different because it has nothing to do with what you buy and everything to do with a habit that quietly wrecks the roots. Here's the blunt claim. Watering your lawn a little bit every day is one of the worst things you can do to it. I know that sounds backwards. It sounds like love. You see a dry morning, you flick the sprinkler on for 10 minutes, you feel like a good caretaker, it feels logical. It felt logical to me. But here is what is actually happening under the surface. Grass roots grow toward water. When you give them a light sprinkle every single day, the water only ever wets the top inch of soil. So the roots have no reason to go deeper. They stay up near the surface, packed into that top inch, sitting in the hottest, driest, most fragile layer of your whole lawn. Then one hot week comes, you skip 2 days. That top inch bakes dry in hours, and because every root you own lives in that top inch, the whole lawn goes crispy almost overnight. You trained it to be fragile. You did it with kindness. A deep-rooted lawn is a completely different animal. Roots that reach 6 to 8 inches down sit in cool, moist soil that the sun can't touch. That lawn can go a week or 2 without rain and barely flinch. So how do you get roots that deep? Here is the rule, and it is simple. Your lawn wants about 1 inch of water per week, and it wants it in 1 or 2 deep soakings, not 7 shallow ones. Method 1, the cheapest thing you can do, put an empty tuna can on the grass, run your sprinkler, and time how long it takes to fill 1 inch. Now you know your number. Most people find it takes around 30 minutes, and they were watering for 10. Method 2, water deep and early. 1 long soak in the early morning, once or twice a week, so the water sinks past that fragile top layer, and the sun doesn't steal it before the roots drink. Deep and rare beats shallow, and often, every single time. Method 3, the one a pro reaches for, is to fix why the water runs off in the first place. If your soil is compacted, the water can't even get down there, and I'll come back to that in a second because it ties everything together. Now, before I give you the last part, I want to be honest about why this matters. If you have gotten value out of this so far, if you are already seeing where you went wrong, do me one favor and hit subscribe. This channel exists to hand you the mechanism, the actual why underneath the soil, the part the aisle keeps fuzzy on purpose. That is all I ask. 1 click, and I'll keep pulling this apart for you. Because here is the layer that made me genuinely angry once I saw it. A shallow-rooted lawn is not just bad for you, it is good for them. A lawn that dries out fast needs more water, browns more often, and looks like it is starving. So what do? You go back to the aisle and buy another bag, convinced the problem is food. It was never food. It was roots. And a fragile, dependent lawn is a repeat customer for life. So the feeding lie and the watering lie feed each other. Salt kills the soil life that would loosen and hold the ground. Hard, lifeless soil sheds water and stays compacted. Compacted soil forces shallow roots. Shallow roots dry out and yellow. Yellow grass sends you back for more salt. Round and round, season after season, and every loop puts money in the same pocket. Which is exactly why the last part matters, because there is one old method that breaks the entire cycle at once, and it is the reason none of this is on the shelf. Part 3. Prevention. This is the method the whole investigation was built around, and it is the one thing the companies could never sell you because it is basically free and it makes you stop buying from them. It is called top dressing, and it means spreading a thin layer of finished compost across the top of your existing lawn. Here is why it works. In one breath, That thin blanket of compost pours millions of living microbes, fungi, and slow organic nutrients directly onto your soil, and those living things rebuild the underground food web that salt destroyed, so the ground starts feeding the grass by itself the way it did before anyone bottled nitrogen. This is not some new hack. This is how the great lawns and the old golf greens were kept alive long before a bag of chemicals existed. Back in the 1800s, greenkeepers had no fertilizer aisle. What they had was compost and loam, and they dressed their turf with a thin skin of it year after year, and those lawns outlived every one of them. Golf course greenkeepers still top dress today quietly because it works, while the homeowner down the road is told to buy salt on a calendar. Here is exactly how you do it. Spread finished screened compost about 1/4 inch thick over your lawn, no deeper, so you don't smother the grass. For 1,000 square feet, that is roughly half a cubic yard of compost. Rake it in gently so it settles down between the blades and reaches the soil. Do it once a year in spring or early autumn, ideally right after you punch some holes in the ground to open up that compacted soil we talked about, so the good stuff falls straight down to the roots. That is it. That is the forbidden trick. Not because it is complicated, but because it is the one method that ends your dependence. Instead of feeding it, 1/4 inch of rotted organic matter does what $200 of bagged salt never could, and it gets better every single year instead of worse, because you are building soil, not renting green. The knowledge was always there. It was written in the old growing manuals. It kept lawns alive for a century before the marketing schedule was invented. The product industry buried it, because you cannot put a living soil food web in a plastic bag and sell it to the same man 4 times a year. The greenkeepers kept it alive and quiet, and now you have it. Let me match this to your situation quickly. If you have a small yard and a tight budget, start with the free moves, leave your clippings, and fix your watering to 1 deep soak a week, and you will see a difference by the end of the season. If you have a medium lawn that has been on the bag program for years and looks tired and patchy, that lawn is starving underneath, and the compost top dressing once a year is the reset button that pulls it off life support. And if you have a big property with hard, compacted clay that sheds water, aerate first to open the ground, then top dress so the living compost drops straight into the holes and rebuilds from the bottom up. Now, here is the new problem you are going to run into, and I want to be straight with you about it. Once your soil comes back to life and your grass thickens up, you are going to notice something in the shady, damp corners. Moss or a patch of stubborn weeds moving in where the grass is still catching up. It happens to almost everyone who makes this switch, because living soil changes the whole balance of the lawn, and the old bag never taught you how to handle it. If that is the corner you are staring at right now, leave me 1 comment and just type the word moss so I know that is your battle, and I'll make sure the next video is built for you. Because you did not have a lawn problem. You had a soil that was quietly taken from you, sold back 1 bag at a time, and now you have got it back. That next video exposes exactly why moss and weeds move in and the old method that clears them without a single chemical. So subscribe right now so it lands in front of you the day it drops. Don't let them sell you the same season twice. I'm so glad you stuck with me to the end. Inside the Amish Garden Circle, I walk you through the whole thing, step by step, picking up right where we just stopped. And in there you can ask me your own questions, and a real person, me, answers you myself. Old ways gardeners like you already belong here. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. Now that you know their little secret, let me show you how to feed your lawn without ever buying fertilizer again. It's simple, it saves you real money, and it starts right here.